report on Bloomberg News quotes sources to say that the Congress party is running desperately low on funds. They go to the extent to say that the party has not transferred any funds for the last 5 months. There has been a curtailment on activities and even on things like providing tea and snacks to visitors in their offices. The members of the party are being asked to contribute more, which begs the question that in the current political scenario, when elections have become so expensive, can a party that is running low on funds have a real shot at victory in the current electoral dispensation? Remember, in the Karnataka elections, a survey has estimated that between 9,500 to 10,500 crore rupees was spent on one state election. What is the future of politics if the money part is removed from it? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Gopal Agarwal of the BJP. Salman Soz of the Congress is joining me. I'm also joined by Yogendra Yadav, President of Swaraj India. And I'm also going to speak this evening with Major General Anil Verma, who is the head of the ADR. Very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us on what is an interesting topic. I must ask Salman Soz first about this report and how true it is. A very senior leader from your party, Shashi Tharoor, has responded to it on Twitter, saying there's no shame in admitting that we're short on funds. Is it true, Mr. Soz? Is the Congress party pretty much broke at this point?
Well, as long as the people of India have faith in the Congress party, I don't think we'll ever be broke. Of course, we face a reality. We face a reality of the BJP having amassed a lot of funds over the last several years, especially leading up to the 2014 Lok Sabha election. We also see how the BJP, after coming to power, has actually, made sure that its lead will be sustainable by coming up with electoral bonds, which are, in my view, and in the view of many independent analysts, these bonds are going to really put a lot of pressure on other political parties, barring the ruling party, and they're going to generate a lot of funds. The Congress will have to adapt. We are in a situation where we will obviously be trailing the BJP in traditional methods, but I think what we can do is go to the people and say, look, I mean, if you want us to be part of the government, if you want us to lead policy making in this country, as we have done for so many years, then you have to help fund our campaigns. And we actually did a pilot during the Karnataka campaign when we raised funds for a very good young candidate who was a PhD scholar. And I think we got some very promising results from that. And I think we'll all have to contribute. Party members will have to contribute. People like I will have to contribute. Everybody has to pitch in, because I think the Congress must stand firm against where the BJP is taking this country.
Well, I get your point, Salman, that you will go to the people, but it costs money to go to the people. And which is why I want to come to Yogendra Yadav and ask you, Mr. Yadav, about your experience at the helm of a very nascent political party, which is fighting some elections without the big monies. How difficult is it practically to really win an election?
Thanks for asking. In fact, I really wish someone had asked this question to us before. I really wish the country were to reflect for a minute on this. The real problem is not that parties like Congress are broke. The word broke has a very relative significance for parties like Congress, because as you mentioned, if in Karnataka about 8 to 9,000 crore rupees have been spent, let us assume Congress must have spent about 2,000 crores out of that. So broke is a very relative term here. But the real problem, and something I've been writing for 20 years about, is that entry barriers to politics have gone so high that the minimum required to contest election meaningfully is so impossibly high that no one without access to big corporate funding can actually enter even seriously. I mentioned you the example of Karnataka, where our party contested 11 seats. I went to one of those seats to campaign for my candidate. I must say, a model of the kind of candidate you would want to see in politics, someone who's been in social service for 20 years. I asked him about funds. He said, sir, no money. I said, how much money would you need to take your message to the electorate? You know what he said? He said, sir, if I get 1 lakh rupee, that would be really very big. 1 lakh rupee, that's all he needed. We desperately tried to arrange it. But please remember that those who want to enter politics, those who are struggling, those who have done every public service and want to enter politics, the biggest obstacle they face is money. And the real problem is not so much that the top spenders are breaking through the roof. The real problem is that the floor is being raised constantly, and therefore unless some form of public funding of elections is found out, there's really no hope. We've really closed the door for newcomers, and then we are regretting saying, oh my God, why are we not having good people in politics? The simplest reason is in front of your eyes.
You know, the Center for Media Studies, which has done this survey and, you know, about Karnataka, also put out figures that in state elections, the candidate has to put up about 75% of the money himself. In general elections, it might be 50 to 60%, and that underscores the point Yogendra Yadav is making, that if you aren't money bags in the first place, you have no chance. I just want to come to the BJP with some figures that the ADR put out recently of your revenues in the financial year 16-17, where the BJP has got over 1,000 crore rupees. There has been an 81% rise in your revenue. And I want to caveat it here saying that there's nothing unusual in this. The party in power, and one which is in power in 20 states, is going to be more attractive to donors. There's no doubt about that. My question to you, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, is does it give you an undue advantage in this day and age? Because just the fact that you can reach potential voters in a more effective way, you just have bigger budgets.
Definitely, the communication channels are very important, and at present elections are very difficult, very costly, and it is not in India alone, it is across the world. Elections requires a large communication. There has to be technology driven data analytics. So many things are important to analyze people's mandate, to understand those things. They require funding. But the only thing is, don't make a virtue out of poverty or anything. It is that you should have a transparent means of collecting funds in the political parties. If you have have transparency in your balance sheet, how you account for the money that you have received, how you spend, if that are transparent, then it's a field which anybody can come to. And if somebody says, when Mr. Yogendra Yadav says that a candidate is saying that if I had only 1 lakh, I will win the election, I don't think it's the right analysis that he is doing it. For 1 lakh,
the question I asked you was, do you have an edge?
I have fought an election is with only not 1 lakh. Yeah, definitely we have an edge, but this edge was with Congress also. They ruled for this country for more than 60 years. So they had the edge. And when you have a larger share of vote, that means you have larger people to support you financially for everything. So there is nothing wrong in only having sufficient resources to fight election, but I think you should have a transparent mechanism to collect funds.
1 minute. Before Yogendra Yadav responds to you.
Has done lot of
before Yogendra Yadav, and I think Salman Soz also wants to respond to you, I want to come to Major General Anil Verma just on the data that ADR has put out and the story it tells. Clearly, sir, the fact that the BJP is a more popular choice than the Congress should not be a big surprise, because they are the party in power, and that tends to happen. That is a pattern that has been followed over the last many years, isn't it? And what does it say about the other regional parties? Because if the Congress is cash strapped, what about the other parties?
You're asking me?
Yes, Mr. Verma.
Samajwadi Party.
Okay. See, the details you've already put out, and these are figures all from the reports of donations received by the parties which they submit to the Election Commission. But I want to raise the larger question. There's no doubt the expenditure in the elections is going through the roof. There is absolutely no control over it. I mean, I'm not saying that money is not required to contest elections. Of course it is required. But there has to be some limit. Can India as a country afford to spend this much amount of money on elections? The last general elections, the official figure put out by the Election Commission was 30,000 crores expenditure. Here we have 10,500 crores as per media reports being spent in Karnataka by the political parties. In addition to that will be the other expenditure of the Election Commission of India. Now, if there are about 5 crore voters in Karnataka, you divide this 10,500 by 5 crores, it comes to about 2,100 crores per voter. I mean, what are we talking about? And this in our country where farmers are committing suicide, where there is gross unemployment, where a certain percentage of people don't get food, twice a day. Can we afford to have only contractors and builders and miners and such like media barons and others contesting elections? What Mr. Yadav mentioned, where is the level playing field? Why can't a decent person who has 1 lakh rupees contest election and expect to win it? The amount of money which is being spent is horrendous. I mean, we have to look at it. State funding is one of the answers. But the immediate solution is that there has to be a ceiling put on the expenditure which a political party can do. There is no expenditure limit. There is a limit on the, and today only I read Milind Deora's article where he's sought an increase in the limit which the candidates can expend. So on one hand you are saying Congress doesn't have money. So there he is saying that you increase the limit of the expenditure which a candidate can do. So these are the issues. And then talking about transparency, I want to ask Mr. Gopal, what about the electoral bonds? How transparent are they?
You know, I want to come to the electoral bonds
the
in
bonds
detail.
which are being purchased.
Can I say something?
No, I want to come to the electoral bonds in just a bit, but I'm going to come to Yogendra Yadav first. With this one figure that the same organization CMS has also predicted that in 2019 we will spend about 50,000 to 60,000 crore rupees on the next general elections. Yogendra Yadav, how did a party like the Aam Aadmi Party even find its place? Because you were part of that initial burst. How did it even find its place? Could that be a model for those to come? Or was that just a one-off?
Well, I'm no spokesperson of Aam Aadmi Party. All I can say is that, yes, what it did in the first election could and should have been a model, namely crowdfunding, going to people and saying, we want to break this, please support us. That's what it did in the first election. I'm not entirely sure what they did in the next election. And from the ADR report, one of the most disappointing things is that Aam Aadmi Party, which began on the promise of clean and accountable funding, is the one party which has not even filed its returns. Probably Mr. Verma could enlighten us more, but that's really disappointing. And what the message it sends is that, well, in a 2 or 3 years' time, you are just like any other party, in fact, slightly worse than them. So I would not get into details of Aam Aadmi Party. And I would just remind the BJP spokesperson that I did not say that in 1 lakh rupee he was going to win election. All that poor candidate, a model of what candidates should be, he could not access even 1 lakh rupee to distribute his message. He needed that much to distribute his message. So on the one hand, we are talking of thousands of crores of rupee. On the other hand, people who ought to be in public life are struggling to get even lakhs of rupees, minimum lakhs that are necessary. So we are dealing with a situation where there are two clear problem ends. One problem, as General Verma has correctly pointed out, is too much money being spent by top parties. Some effective ceiling has to be done. We are dealing with a situation of legal lacunae, and Election Commission which has virtually given up on trying to put any ceiling on election laws. All that Election Commission does is a useless drill most of the time. On the other hand, the problem is too little white money available to political parties, too little money available to people who want to enter the electoral scene. And the entire system is rigged in favor of those who are already in. This is plutocracy. This is the kind of thing which is done all, many places. This has to be broken. So these are two distinct problems. One, too much money by top players which need to be curbed. Second, too little money for everyone else, which needs to be beefed up. These are two separate things which require two different solutions. And the third and overarching problem, of course, is lack of transparency.
Okay, I want to come to Salman Soz on the point that the Congress is a legacy player. If the BJP now has the lion's share of donations coming in, it is something that the Congress has enjoyed for several decades. There would, of course, always have been a time when the Congress is not in power. Shouldn't there have been a better plan? Why have you come to this situation, and how will you then now fight it out?
Look, the fact that we're in this situation, a lot of water has flown under the bridge, so we are where we are. Now, but what is happening now is that, we talk about transparency. Everybody on this panel seems to want transparency. But the point is that we're in the middle of a situation where there's going to be great opacity in our election funding. Because I think the model that the BJP is going to push for, and I think I'm pretty certain this is the way they want to go, is that they will basically go to some very few wealthy individuals and corporations and basically say, you know what, let's go the electoral bonds route. Why should we collect tidbits of money? We can get a large chunk of money from very few people, keep it very tight, and then take that money and fight election after election and keep winning. If you correlate election funding with prospects of victory, then the BJP could have a sustainable way of keeping its majority. So I think transparency is good, but let's ensure it. And the BJP spokesperson says that they want transparency. Then why is there no transparency in electoral bonds? They should be able to answer that. Now, I will say this. I fought an election. I was a reasonably well-educated person. I talked about health and education. I was a World Bank officer who had left the World Bank to join politics. What I found was that even though I tried to play straight and narrow and everything else, I had a good message and a lot of people supported me. But, people buy votes. And all the funding that we are talking about right now, this is supposedly the white funding. Where is the black funding? Outside Jammu and Kashmir, I think people spend a lot more on just buying votes. That is cash. So we can talk a lot about how the BJP has a lead in the huge lead, in almost insurmountable lead in publicly available data in terms of funding. But what about black money that the Prime Minister keeps talking about? But I think the BJP has loads of it, and they're spending it. And so we're not just behind on the white money funding. This black money thing is actually swamping the white money funds as well.
Let Gopal Agarwal respond. A lot of panelists have raised the question of electoral bonds. There seems to be little faith in it, and so far the electoral bonds seem to be favoring the BJP more. As per the Bloomberg report that I'm citing, not too much funds are coming the Congress way through these electoral bonds. Is there a concern over transparency, or actually I should put it the other way, concern over the level of anonymity these bonds actually give the donors?
No, actually the problem of electoral funding was at two levels. There was large funds coming to the elections, and elections are becoming very expensive. I agree that somewhere down the line there should be control on how much expenditure is done on the elections. And the second aspect was that there was a lot of black money getting into the electoral process. The important factor on behalf of the government was, first, we need so many reforms, but let us start somewhere, and we thought that we should stop the flow of black money into the electoral process. Now Congress is saying so much of hypocritically preaching so many things. Why did not they do it in their own rules? They ruled the country for more than 60 years. They should have brought these changes in 4 years. Now they put every blame on BJP. Even for their evils, they will blame BJP. So that's the hypocrisy. It's not acceptable. What we have done is we have tried to reduce the flow of black money into the system. We know that we need more reforms. We have not even reduced the anonymous donation from the figure of 20,000 to 22,000. So we are moved in that direction.
Okay.
Can Congress tell where did they go?
Okay, let Salman Soz respond. Let Salman Soz respond. But just one pointer before you respond, Mr. Soz. Can you today blame the BJP in electoral bonds if donors don't want to give you money? One of the reasons could be, and I'm talking about corporate donors here, one of the reasons possibly could be that the Congress's policies don't seem very pro-business to them. Perhaps. And so business doesn't want to support a party which might not be pro-business.
Look, I'm sorry. I do not accept this one bit. I mean, India has progressed faster during UPA's time than any time in India's history. So
Mr. Gopal Agarwal, you'll have to hold on while Salman Soz responds. That's the way it will work on this panel, sir. Please. Yes, Mr. Soz.
Frankly, I think the corporate side has progressed far more than the average Indian has, and I think we need to revise some of our policies so that we don't have so much inequality in this country. But be that as it may, corporates are welcome to donate all of their money to the BJP and nothing to the Congress. But this has to be disclosed, and it should be publicly available data. The BJP spokesperson talks about reducing the level of undocumented kind of cash donations to 2,000 rupees. Why not make it 1 rupee? Let's have total transparency. Let BJP and Congress. We are willing to support that. Even if you donate 1 rupee in cash to any party, it should be disclosed as to who gave that money. As far as corporate donations are concerned, please give all the money to the BJP, but you must, and the Indian citizens have a right to know who is trying to influence the government. It could be a Congress government tomorrow. It is a BJP government today. But the people have a right to know who's funding these political parties.
That data is actually available. I'm going to pull out some data from ADR once again for 16-17 and look at the list of the top 3 donors for the Congress and the BJP and the top 3 companies really which have donated to the Congress and BJP. You will find that they're pretty much the same companies, only they have chosen to donate less to the Congress than to the BJP. So that's the list for the BJP, and the Congress list is also very similar from FY13 to FY16. In fact, the exact same 3 companies, they've just donated in different amounts, which happens all the time. But Yogendra Yadav, is it really about corporate donors? Because, that's the iffy part. We've seen this Vedanta story today, and so many angles to it have been discussed. And one of the angles have been about how the BJP and the Congress have both been recipients of money from this huge conglomerate over time, have acted in tandem to retrospectively change rules where they don't have to answer for those donations. You cannot cut away corporate donations from politics, but is that one tricky area which has not been worked out yet?
The real question is not whether to eliminate corporate donations or not. That would be a different thing altogether. We are speaking of absolutely minimal, simple things here. The Vedanta story, I'm glad you brought it in, not only clarifies how hypocritical this Congress-BJP divide and opposition is. Not only were both of them beneficiaries of Vedanta money, both of them were illegal beneficiaries of that, which is what the High Court of Delhi said, and both of them retrospectively changed the law in a completely unconstitutional way. So this is the story of money in elections. And on electoral bonds, let me just say, and General Verma can tell me whether it's right or wrong, which is this is the single biggest leap backwards in the history of electoral funding in India. It's not reform, this is deform. And after you today have the list of the top 3 donors for Congress and BJP. From next year onwards, you would not have any such list. It would simply say electoral bond. So the minimum that we are talking about today is whoever donates, can we get to know their name? Can the nation have some minimum transparency? And unfortunately, what this government has done is not only something that would benefit them, that's a short-term game. The real thing is that they have destroyed the architecture of minimum financial transparency necessary for running a democracy. That is what is at stake.
Let General Verma come in on that point. And just with this one question, that the electoral bonds, while of course giving corporates a veil, was technically also supposed to give everyone an even playing field. Because the fear of corporates cited was that if they give to the government, the opposition today, the government in power would be upset with them and it would impact their business. At the end of the day, that was the reasoning. The electoral bonds doesn't seem to have helped the Congress in any way.
No, but my point is that why was the Congress quiet when the government was pushing through this thing and all sorts of amendments were done to introduce this electoral bond scheme? Why was the Congress quiet when ADR has been asking for the political parties to come under RTI? This is a huge, I agree totally with Mr. Yadav that this is a huge backward leap. I mean, he's very rightly said these ADR reports will no longer be available after a couple of years because there will be nothing to show. Right now, at least, whatever they are showing in the reports, the public gets to know. In a couple of years, we won't know anything. So, how is it transparency? I don't understand. It is being tom-tommed as transparency on the part of the government and the BJP. And I'm glad you mentioned the illegal funding and the foreign funding of BJP and Congress, where they're both guilty. And once the ADR went for a contempt petition in the Supreme Court, they quickly amended the law. And even a dead law of 1976 FCRA under which they were found guilty. So I am sorry to say, but the political parties are not at all serious about reducing the expenditure in the elections or in enhancing transparency in any way. So that is why we only look towards the judiciary. And
that the sad truth is that they cannot afford to. Everyone will have to play dirty, everyone will have to play by the same rules, and everyone will have to outspend the other. But I think, Salman Soz, you must respond to the specific criticism that Major Verma has brought up, that when this whole electoral bond was being passed into law, the Congress party didn't seem to know what it's going to mean.
I think the Congress party and spokespersons, including people like myself. In fact, I attended ADR's. I remember attending one of ADR's events on electoral bonds. We've been critical of this change for a long time now. The problem is the government has a brute majority in the Lok Sabha, and they've actually caused a lot of damage to our parliamentary system by pushing through legislation that we are simply unable to stop. And it isn't, come on. I mean, we have enough very bright legal minds in our party. They understand what the hell electoral bonds can do for the BJP and to the Congress and other opposition parties. I think if there's one thing that we should be pushing for, and that is full disclosure of who the donors are, as far as electoral bonds are concerned. Mind you, in countries, for example, like the United States, corporates have to disclose who they're donating to. They do it, and nobody's kind of going after them and saying, "Why did you donate to this party or the other?" And I think we should
start looking at how politics works in other countries, and over here there are fears. There are fears, and to the donors, they're valid fears. But Major Verma, I just wanted to come in on your point very quickly. Yes, Major Verma.
I say something?
Yeah, well, I was saying that if the Congress felt so strongly against the electoral bonds, then why didn't they stage walkouts and go to the president and stage a dharna at El Gyara Murti and all that? Not a whimper?
No, I think if I don't have everything on my at the top of my head right now, but if I could write to Verma Saab later and give him a chronology of what we have done on this issue. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, Gopal Agarwal wants to come in. Yes, Gopal Agarwal.
I want to tell you that it is for our party first time in power that has tried to reduce the use of black money or liquid cash into the electoral process. If Congress was serious, they could have done within their time in 60 years in power.
The amount
we have
of
reduced the
hundreds
cash
of crores of
from
cash which was caught in the Karnataka elections. I want to give you an open platform for all your arguments, Mr. Agarwal, but I just want to say 4 years down, into your 5-year term, it's time to stop talking about what the Congress didn't do. I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to start talking about what you are doing and whether it's working or not.
What I did. No, that's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you what our party did. We have reduced the cash anonymous donation from 20,000 to 2,000.
Yes, you mentioned
now
it.
any donation above 2,000 will have to be given a complete list to the election commission. That is the transparency that we have brought. Second thing is, from electoral bonds, we are trying to reduce the flow of black money or illegal cash money into the system so that there is a transparency in expenditure by the political parties. We are, as a party, have been filing complete returns, declaring income. Everything is very transparent.
Look at the ADR report. Both of you were late in filing your returns in the year 16-17. You know, I hope we don't come to a situation where a stellar agency like ADR doesn't have enough data to put out. Well, no one can really point fingers at the BJP for getting the lion's share of donation. To the victor go the spoils. Achhe din for the BJP for sure. The Congress will have to figure out how to fight these elections without that much money power, and then the Congress party should really think of the other parties who are trying to make a difference.
Going by Yogendra Narayan's logic,
I'll have to end it there.
As per Mr. Yogendra Narayan's logic, this electoral bond will help the opposition more, because they do not.
Okay, the opposition doesn't trust the bonds. Maybe if they start getting a lot of money through electoral bonds, they will trust them. But I'll have to end this here. Thank you so much for joining us in the discussion today on a very important subject that I hope our viewers appreciate, that we've chosen to pick this subject at this time where election funding has shot through the roof. Those budgets are only going to increase over time, and we'll have to start thinking that should only people who can afford such big numbers be our representatives? Should that be the criteria, that if you're a money bag, you can make it in Indian politics? Thank you so much to all of you for joining us this evening.